It's the year 1227. The rough steppes of Mongolia are unified under the leader Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was probably one of the most famous, ruthless and debated persons in the history of mankind. But this story does not take place during the reign of Genghis Khan, but during the rule of his son and successor, Ögedai Khan. The Mongols themselves are horse people, nomadic people who lived in the steppes between Europe and China. Those kinds of people were unique to the history of the Eurasian continent. The Mongols lived and breathed with their horses, grew up with them from a very young age, and learned to ride soon after they could walk. They were masters of the bow, with which they were able to reliably hit the target 500 meters away, repeatedly. Their physical state was absolutely stunning. If you would look at one of those warriors today, he would probably look like a professional athlete. It is said that they could empty their quiver with a bow of 65 kilograms pulling weight within minutes. Those horse people were terrifying warriors, a match for any army at the time. What is possible with soldiers like that was first really visible in Europe during the raids of Attila the Hun, who basically conquered the whole of Europe and defeated one of the most powerful empires of all time, the Roman Empire. Genghis Khan united the horse people under his banner and formed the Mongolian Empire. He conquered through the most sophisticated, technologically most advanced nation at the time, China. There was no match for the Mongols, not in China, not in the Muslim world, and as we will soon find out, not in Europe either. In 1227, Genghis died. Usually, when the strong leader of one of those steppe people died, there would be a civil war. This didn't happen here. Genghis let their sons decide who should be the next Khan of Mongolia. They chose Ögedai. Ögedai was a very interesting person in its own right. He was probably one of the more liberal and peaceful sons of Genghis, for Mongolian standards at least, a strong and thoughtful leader who would go on with what the Mongols saw as their divine mission, conquering the world. In 1236, after conquering a huge chunk of the Muslim and Chinese world, Ögedai set his eye on the until now basically untouched Europe. He sent a massive army, mustered and ready to conquer Europe, with famous generals as their leaders. So the Mongols marched into the core part of what we call now Russia, at the time the Kievan Rus. Another horse people, the Kipchak, wanted to warn the Russians. They allied up and marched against the Mongols. The Mongols completely crushed the Russian army. Many big towns, holy towns to the Russians, were completely sacked by the Mongols. It shouldn't take long that the Mongols moved their eye further to the west, into today's Hungary and Germany. Again, the Europeans tried to stand up to this absolute force of nature as it was perceived back then. At the Battle of Legnica and the Battle of Mohi, both forces met, 100,000 men on each side. On one side, you have shining knights on their horses, heavy armed men of the Templar Order, and the fearing Hungarian cavalry, the biggest army Europe has ever fielded in the Middle Ages. On the other side, that force of nature, the Mongolian horsemen. At those battles, the winner was long unclear. The Europeans fought bravely and held their ground a long time. But again, the bravery and chivalry of the Europeans should not be enough to stop the Mongols. They crushed even the strongest force the Europeans could muster. Europe was open now, and the Mongols could conquer it with ease. But then something happened. Ögedai died. Ögedai was not only a liberal leader for the Mongols, but had also a bit of a drinking problem, which was not uncommon in the Mongolian culture. Nonetheless, his drinking problem should be his death in the end. The Mongolian army wandered back to the east to get a new leader for a Khanate, and after destroying the Chinese and the Muslim civilizations, Europe should only get a black eye from the Mongols. This was one of the reasons why Europe walked up as the leading civilization in the world, and the Mongols should never come back in this force to Europe. If you liked this video, please subscribe for more extraordinary stories about the history of humankind.